Thank you, Arindam, for joining us.
Thank you.
You are the CEO of one of the very important sector which requires this skills. There's a huge demand for it, and that's why like we call it an Automotive Skill Development Corporation, and you're heading that as well. Fascinating to see that the numbers are only kind of improving for you. But we also seen that the impact of PLI
Yeah.
that is kind of now being seen in the form of demand for skilled manpower, while we are seeing that it's already about 7 lakh people or the employment that they have generated in last 2 3 years. But the trend is also that it's also leading or compelling organization to look at many more innovative ways to create workforce of skilled manpower. So just want to understand, your views on this. If you are witnessing any trends as such, any such programs that you are working on, any collaborations that you are looking at. Uh, we would love to hear that from you.
Thanks, Sumit, for inviting me to be part of this. And yes, thankfully, we see this as a very uh, positive, uh, you know, whatever you want to call it, positive scenario or narrative or whatever, developing on the manufacturing space in India, which was long overdue. I come from a background of manufacturing industry originally, so I feel very excited about it with this entire Make in India. And I think Make in India, Make for India, and Make for the world. I mean, everything is included in this. Automotive, if I were to look at, we are more than 100-year-old in terms of automobile industry globally. The Indian industry has matured over the last 30 years, 30, 40 years now. Once we had Maruti coming into this, the Suzuki joint venture happening. And, a lot more technical collaborations in the automotive space happened around that time in two-wheelers, in commercial vehicles, etc. So, um, it's been fairly static in that sense because it has been IC engine driven. So all we knew about automobiles was either it is a petrol engine or a diesel engine, and that's it. I mean, you do different sizes of engines and different sizes of vehicles, and that's about it. So in a sense, it was getting too boring, I would say. But if I look at over the last 10 years or so, a lot of changes and a lot of disruptions have happened in this industry. So while I know that everyone is excited about electric vehicle and electric vehicle as a term, but I think if you look at the broader picture, it's about that we are looking at multiple alternate fuel technology options. We are talking about hybrids, you're talking about hydrogen, you're talking about, different kinds of technologies within battery itself in battery electric vehicle. So there are many different options that are coming up. Secondly, I think the vehicle today has moved from being just a mechanical device to an electromechanical device to now a multi-technology device, and we are very conveniently, I think we are calling it as a software-defined vehicle now, SDVs that we call, where a significant part of the vehicle is being controlled and monitored through software programs, and therefore it's a computer on wheels in that sense. But I mean, while it sounds that simple, but it becomes even more complex because you have mechanical parts which remain and continue and will continue to be mechanical because there is motion involved. There are electricals, there are electronics, and then there is software and all of that. So we see a huge requirement in terms of both the quality of skilled manpower that are coming into the industry, and also a huge need is there in terms of upskilling or reskilling of existing manpower as well, which is part of a lifelong learning program, which has been there in the auto industry, but it has been fairly predictable, I would say, as people do it, because there will be incremental changes, emission norms will get tighter, some safety norms will get tighter, etc., and people will learn about it. But today we are talking about amalgamation of many different technologies at one place, and therefore it becomes very complex even in the learning system itself. You know. So in this context, I think Indian auto industry is very in a very, very sweet spot, both at the vehicle manufacturing level as well as the component level. Uh, I believe today it's probably the second largest uh, export segment in terms of India's exports in the product export segment. So auto component it plays a very significant role in the exports as well. And globally, I think the quality and the delivery is very well accepted. Now, if we have to grow and scale this up, the biggest challenge that we face as a country is in terms of having skilled manpower. And in this, I think a very significant role is played by apprenticeship, because when we are talking about a manufacturing process or a technical process, uh, apprenticeship is very, very important, because it is very difficult to expect somebody to do a very quick 15-day orientation and get started on doing or delivering some bit of work. Yes, there are some elements within the auto industry which can be done like that, but by and large, most of it will need a very prolonged interaction in the environment with the experienced people, learning from them, understanding processes, etc., etc. So we see the industry developing in a model where we are seeing a 3S adoption that we formally talk about. Uh, the vehicles are becoming safer, so safety is becoming very important. And not only the vehicle, the production process itself is very heavily focused on safety elements. Sustainability in the whole process, how do we make the whole thing very sustainable, and even the vehicles sustainable, recyclable, etc., reusable. And the third is the vehicles are becoming smart, so are the production processes as well. Now, if you look at all these three areas, there is a lot of skilling that needs to get done. So, skilling required in three other S areas, let's say. So, for us at Automotive Skill Development Council, it becomes very imperative for us to work very closely with the industry partners to look at how this is to be done. And the important take on this is the PLI, the production linked incentive, which the government has as a policy intervention. The government is incentivizing organizations to get into the manufacturing and make in India program and take certain financial benefits out of this process. And the whole PLI scheme, while capital investments are being made, in order to run these machines, or basically run these production lines, you need people who are trained to do so, and therefore, skill training becomes very, very important in this process. In terms of the PLI focus area, I think there is a lot of focus on emerging technology areas like automation and robotics integration. While on a broader term, we call about Industry 4.0 application, but that's just a philosophy. When you get down to actually implementing things, focus is on automation and robotics. Focus is on connectivities, connectivity of machine, connectivity of vehicles. Connectivity has become very important because the development in the telecom industry is also being adopted in areas like automotive industry, both at the vehicle level as well as at the production level. And whenever there is connectivity, there are associated challenges of cybersecurity, associated challenges of data analytics. All these are becoming very important understanding and terminologies that one will need to live with if they have to be in that environment. If you have to be in an environment of today's society, you cannot say that I don't know how to use internet, or I don't know how to use a smartphone. I mean, these are given. So if you go into a manufacturing environment today, these are some of the basics that you got to know. How IIoTs work, how can you program robots, how can you secure your working environment from cyber attacks. All of these are reality. So whether you are at a supervisory managerial role or you are at an operator role, you got to have certain levels. Obviously, the level of understanding will change depending on what level of the organization you are in. But you got to have exposure to all of this. And this is where apprenticeship comes in very heavily.
But Arindam, I would also like to, you touched upon a lot of future skills, right? And you also spoke about that how the machine is now becoming complex because it is not just one technology, it's an amalgamation of multiple technologies as well, right? So I just want to know that, and you did mention that apprenticeship is also picking up, because, people need skilled people. But at the same time, when you talk about these future skills, which are, you anticipate are going to get, required, or the need is going to be there basis the PLI now, getting implemented in this area as well. And a lot of companies are now getting entering into it. Now, are you coming up with any specific programs which are catering to these future skills? And before that, could you highlight on what are these future skills in the automotive sector looks like? Now, just to my understanding and what I have been, interacting with various industries, it looks like that, you can broadly categorize these skills in two parts. One is the high order skill sets, which, let's say, talks about largely in the R&D and designing and all that, right? And could be even technology based as well. And then there could be low order skill sets, which is mostly to do with more on the fabrication and on the manufacturing and the assembly line as well. So I think I would just like to, if you could just highlight on what are the various skill sets which are currently in demand and what are these possible future skills looks like, and what are the other programs that have been designed or curated by the Automotive Sector Skill Council to cater to these needs.
Very appropriate, I guess. So, I would say that future skills today is happening in all sphere of the automotive industry. If you talk about design and engineering, there are future skill applications. If you talk about manufacturing, there are future skill applications. If there are, automotive retail, automotive after sale service, automotive even driving, there are future skills. So there are different layers of future skills, so to say. Because, and somebody had questioned me at this point in time that how can it be future skill? If you are teaching something today, it is already there. It's not future, it's there. So it's maybe also some people call it as an emerging skill, kind of a thing. So if I look at broadly two areas which we are focusing currently, and I think as we go along, there will be more and more areas that we need to look at. One is the electric vehicle related programs and courses that we are looking at. And one of the very first programs that we are looking at, and that is more so for existing manpower, is around high voltage safety. Because the whole auto industry, the way safety was looked at, high voltage safety wasn't part of the lexicon. And if you're looking with if you are now operating with vehicles which are coming with, 600 volt, 800 volt batteries, also the high-end cars actually. But even beyond that normal two and three wheeler, if you move to a four wheeler or a bus or whatever, or a commercial vehicle, you will use a high voltage system. And if you are using a high voltage system, there is a huge safety angle to it, and one will need to be talking about. But then there are many areas within that. So you have, battery assembly as an area. You have, motor and powertrain as an area. You will get many areas within electric vehicle, and we also see a lot of interest coming in the after sales service of the electric vehicle, because that's again a new field which is coming up. We are also doing some apprenticeship program there within, especially if we are looking at electric buses, kind of, mechanics which are required in the industry, etc. But that is post manufacturing, let's say. The other big area other than electric vehicle is the industry 4.0, what we loosely call it. Basically, we talk about automation, mechatronics, amalgamation area, which is on the side of manufacturing. So it could be very simple automation of processes, which as an industry we've always been used to. We've been doing pneumatic-based system, hydraulic-based system. Now we are doing electronic-based system. And now there are larger and larger automation integration where we have been bringing in computer vision, language learning models, machine learning models, AI into the manufacturing process itself. So while these are just emerging as of today, but there are many who are seeing this as a huge opportunity to automate and somewhere foolproof the skilling requirement. Now, therefore, the skill requirement at a very operating level might have a bleaker future. But people who can manage these devices, program these devices, that need will constantly grow. And
Sure.
therefore, you need to move what you were referring to as a higher order skills, let's
That's
say. So
sure.
today, when we do Make in India, I think we should not forget, and I think in the last Bharat Mobility Expo, when our Honorable Prime Minister was there, he was basically talking about design in India. you know.
Yes.
And the moment we start looking at design in India, it opens up a huge opportunity area. And there are, significant number of global capability centers now being set up, even in our domain, which is automotive domain. In fact, most large manufacturers are having GCCs here now. And they are struggling to get the right skilled engineering talent required, because that's the kind of input required from a design engineer or perspective, etc. And this is where a council like ours need to now work much closer with engineering colleges, private universities, to bring in programs which can build the base and the foundation of youngsters so that they have a pathway to get into these positions.
Great. Great. So those are the modules of the program which have been curated by your sector skill council, which is now getting adopted by the higher education bodies to kind of prepare these
Right,
people talent for this kind of job
right.
roles. But also, I would like to understand from the industry point of view, right? That what are the kind of trends that you're witnessing in terms of intake, in terms of adoption of newer programs or new initiatives for improving their workforce, uh, to cater to this demand.
One of the major thrusts that we are focusing on, especially on on the component manufacturers as well as on the dealerships, is how do we engage and encourage industry members to look at the skill training pipeline preparation in a much more active way. So while I think making or helping them adopt the apprenticeship process has been one challenge. The other opportunity that I see today, having done apprenticeship for a while now, where we see a significant number of attrition happening in the initial few months
That's right.
of the apprentice joining the apprenticeship program. The only way to reduce that is to look at a proper bridge program, of the manpower coming in from an academic or an education setup into an apprentice or an industry setup. In an industry environment, in a training location is where a person must spend some time, maybe 2 to 3 months, as a kind of a pre-apprenticeship training before they can get into a formal apprenticeship training program, you know.
So are you suggesting more of like some industry academia collaborations to ensure like to attract as well as to engage with the apprentices is what you're trying to say
Yeah,
right?
both ways.
Oh,
I would say that industry can have multiple models. I would say that at least three models that I can think of. A could be that the industry partners with two, three academic institutions in their neighborhood, okay, where they get actively involved towards the end of the program, in the last 6 months of the program, etc., where the students start spending more and more time in the industry environment and getting a first-hand exposure of what he or she can expect should they decide to join this organization post their academic program.
sure.
And the organization is ready to give that kind of an exposure to them, because no matter how good your academic institution or training institution is, that institution cannot simulate the real world industrial environment ever.
Absolutely.
So unless there is a way to access that environment by the student after he has done his foundation for skills and programs and everything else, the last 6 months or 1 year of the program, how they can engage with them. So this is one model. The other model could be that uh, there could be a cluster of industry organizations which are located in a particular geography, and they're not able to locate a suitable academic institution to partner with, but they can come together to form like a cluster training institution or an association based institution for training, which is the only pipeline through which people will get into those organizations in that cluster. So the cluster starts delivering the pipeline, and the funnel creates the funnel for these people to get into these organizations. And it's a like a shared common services center kind of a thing for skilled training purposes, essentially.
But are you also seeing more adoption? Like you said, that the academia is now adopting these very, very evolved skilling programs, as you said. But do you also see that even the industry is now kind of collaborating with you to execute or take some of your curriculums and start training themselves? Are you seeing that trend as well?
It's a slightly uphill task today, given where we have started, and one thing I generally say after many interactions now is that ASDC is like an interpreter organization, because when we speak to the academia, we see a certain language in which things are spoken, and the same language is not understood by the
I
industry.
think industry.
And the industry speaks in a certain language which the academia doesn't understand.
Sure.
So the challenge has been that
Yeah.
while we say that industry academia partnerships are not becoming very successful, except a few here and there, in general, they don't become very, very effective or successful, and a lot of industries give up, a lot of academia gives up. My understanding is that a lot of it has got to do like you put people from two hemispheres speaking two different languages in one room and expect them to collaborate. It becomes very challenging, generally. So you need someone who can interpret, you know. So an organization like ours could play that role significantly, and what that is what we are trying to play in that case. But still, no matter how much collaboration happens, I would say that there is always this need that there has to be a very active part both of them have to play. A lot of times, these partnerships do not fructify primarily because each one expects the other partner to take an active role. So you need maybe a catalyzer also sometimes. So some of these are challenges that we are seeing in those.
But then nothing like a corporate wants to execute by themselves because they do have their own L&D teams as well. And
They
they,
do, and that's the third model that I was coming to. That there are organizations who now want to do this training, and in that case, you know, my own view would be that yes, if there are some organizations who are capable of doing it, why not they do it actually? And some of the most successful training partners that we work with are training partners who are subsidiary organizations of an industry organization,
Fantastic.
you know,
Okay.
because they understand industry pretty well, okay,
Yeah.
and they have acquired the knowledge of doing the understanding the training ecosystem. And I
Absolutely.
think it becomes much easier rather than a training ecosystem partner trying to understand the industry uh, issues of the industry ecosystem, because that's much more complex. I mean, to that
True.
sense.
True.
Obviously, I'm not demeaning the training ecosystem. It's also complex, but I think it's slightly easier to acquire, I would say.
Have you seen a trend of where such training or collaboration with you, or let's say the initiatives by the industry of doing these trainings and adopting your curriculums, have you
Yes.
seen any trends in last 1 or 2 years? Have they
Yeah.
gone up?
Absolutely. I think we now currently have a very active engagement with 75 plus such industry centers.
And what percentage growth have you seen in last 1 to 2 years?
Used to be about, at best, about 10, 12 such centers.
Oh, that's phenomenal growth.
Yeah, because it was largely some of the OEMs and some very passionate people in the industry who would have done it. They, when we started focusing on this area and started working on this, we were amazed that a lot of people were doing already this kind of a training. It's just that they were not doing it in a very structured manner that we help them bring into,
Hmm.
or a recognized certification pattern. They were doing it much more informally or semi-formally, I would say, in terms of doing it. So we found that those are the people who are the lowest hanging opportunity in terms of who can become like an affiliated partner of ASTC. And we see that those working quite well in many such organizations. Currently, we are in discussion with 20 plus more organizations in pipeline. And every day we are trying to do this connection. And thankfully, our industry and the industry associations have been very, very supportive, and they have been egging us that we should come forward and do that hand-holding and support to the industry to do this. In many cases, of course, they want connections to the academic institutions, etc., which we are doing. So it depends on the need, but many of them are very keen to do it on their own also.
Would you have any statistics to share that what's the kind of current skill demand in the automotive sector, including the OEMs and the component? And what is the kind of demand that you anticipate in next 2 to 3 years?
If you look at a direct enrollment into the auto industry, the number varies between, I think, some 17 million to 19 million in the auto industry, which is manufacturing, engineering, sales, service, all combined, essentially. And then there are probably almost equal numbers or slightly less number, which are indirectly associated. So let's not get into that directly. Now, even if I look at this 17 to 19 million, and the industry is growing at between 12 to 15% at a growth rate. So at a minimum level, about 10% growth on this manpower is given, even if we automate a lot of processes and all that stuff, or
So
we
you
get
have a
somebody
long
to
way. I mean,
scale.
you have a tall task.
You
That
are, you have huge, and then you have at least about maybe 10% overall, attrition or people retiring from the industry and all that
mm,
kind of stuff. So those need to be refilled, you know. So all in all, there is a huge requirement, and we are just scratching the surface today, actually, as a council. But is it that the industry has stopped working? It's not. They find their own means and ways of finding manpower, whether
That
skill.
exactly is the point. If you say that it's already about 17 million, you keep adding the growth numbers, and if you were to look at the backfills, that
Hmm.
again becomes phenomenal only for the
Yeah.
direct, kind of requirement. So obviously, with the now PLI focus on Make in India, with the have India being positioned as an export hub now with China plus one thing, obviously the demand is probably may even go much higher. I mean,
Yes.
this you're talking about in last 1 or 2 years, but going forward, this growth rate could be much higher as well.
Yeah. So the capacity needs to be built. So if I look at my industry, our biggest employments are below graduation in terms of numbers, if you look at, I
Yes,
mean, very
talking about
different.
the uneducated or a low educated people, right?
I would say that they need to be very technically skilled and
Mm.
very hands-on, while at a graduation level, you just become little more theoretical in nature, etc., and less of hands-on. So we need more people which are hands-on. So up to diploma level, there is a huge requirement. Today, there is an acute shortage of diploma manpower, for instance,
Mm.
in the industry. I mean,
Sure.
anytime any organization, reasonably sized organization that we talk to, they're struggling to get people with diploma. They're struggling to get people with ITI, and
Yes,
therefore they're resorting to taking in people who are 10th pass, 12th pass, and doing their own training, etc. So
absolutely.
I think we need to enhance the capacity. We need to do a capacity. So, and a lot of challenges happening with the placement of engineers per se, because the seeds grew very fast. The expectations there that they would want to remain in engineering kind of job role. Now, the engineering kind of job role is only a small percentage of the overall requirement.
Yeah,
We can't accept so many engineers. And then as an engineer, you don't want to do production or maintenance kind of work, essentially. You
yeah,
don't want to be hands-on. Your expectations are very different.
absolutely.
So there is that mismatch in terms of what is being where you are educating people and what is actually being required by the industry.
Industry. Yeah, that gap, of course, is there. It's more geographical and even in terms
Yeah,
of the skill set as well.
yeah,
But now, what I do kind of interpret to what you have been saying, that now there is a some bit of way where at least that matching of the skill sets is
yeah,
happening with the
yeah,
industry academic collaborations, where even your the organizations are taking initiatives by themselves, and where there has been a trouble or a little discomfort between the industry academia collaboration, that's where you kind of step in and help them to kind of match the requirements or understand each other's requirement, kind of a thing.
yeah, yeah. Even the
Great.
capacity of ITIs, for example,
Mhm.
over the last 10 years have grown phenomenally. But again, there is still more requirement. But I'm saying that the good thing is that while it was kind of static for quite a few years in the middle years, post independence,
Mm.
last decade or so, I think there has been a renewed thrust on pushing this. We need a little more push on diploma programs, for instance, because if for an ITI kind of a candidate to graduate them to eventually to a supervisory role is sometimes a little challenging. That is where the diploma comes in. So if there is and the whole policy intervention in terms of the national credit framework, where there is a possibility now of transitioning from ITI, adding some additional courses and becoming a diploma, adding some courses, becoming a degree. I think that flexibility and that constant movement of pathway as your role matures is
Mm.
probably what is going to make sense. Rather
True.
than everybody trying to finish everything by the age of 22 and then trying to figure out what to do.
True. True, true, true. That whole learning curve is now kind of transforming as well.
Yeah.
I don't know, my last question to you is another trend that what we have witnessed, and we would really like to get your validation on that is that we've seen that the demand for the women
Hmm.
workforce is also kind of
Yeah.
increasing, and specifically in manufacturing and automotive as well, right? What has been your statistics? What are the trends that you are witnessing, uh, with your numbers that you keep logging in?
Sure.
Are you seeing the shift in that composition?
Absolutely. Absolutely, Sumit. In fact, uh, these days, as if the challenges were less, earlier the challenge was how can you get us more skill qualified manpower, in diploma, in ITI, or a certified manpower. And we've always had shortage of such people. Now people are saying that I need to hire only women in a particular line
That's
or a
right.
particular unit, or a particular shop. And then the challenge becomes that how do I get diploma, ITI, or a certified candidate where we have a woman? Because if you look at ITIs in their engineering trades, which are the technical trades, the admission of women is very, very minuscule, very rare. Okay.
Hmm.
Uh, there are some numbers, obviously, there are some numbers, but that's not adequate in terms of what the need is today for the industry. There are people who want machinists, welders, fabricators, sheet metal workers who want these women to do it, actually. We're not finding enough women, and not only certified, even if we have to launch training program and we want to launch only women only training program, it becomes very, very challenging in the Indian context because there are certain set notion of where women can work in this country,
Hmm.
and factory doesn't figure in that list, generally, you know.
Mhm.
So, and even if it is a factory, it can be a pickle making factory or a whatever, that kind of a factory. Uh, when we talk about technical factories where there are safety issues involved, etc., etc., people may have to wear safety shoes, helmets, safety goggles for working. It is extremely challenging to mobilize women. But as far as the industry is concerned, I think we are finding a lot more industry coming up to us and saying that I want to increase my diversity in my workforce, and I want to do it now. How can you help me? Can you give me women candidates who can be hired? Now, we don't have a ready-made supply of such people per se. So we are talking to them. We are saying that, okay, let's figure out, can we do custom design programs to do that, etc. Uh, if there are benefits, further benefits that are available. See, financial benefits, nobody is willing to, I mean, in our industry, it's not that major hindrance in terms of hiring people. But sometimes some people are slightly reluctant because if they have to be, because many plants work on a three-shift basis. So if women have to be rotated in shifts, there are certain rules, regulations, one will have to be followed. Some organizations are still thinking about it, but some have found smart ways. They have found that there are certain lines, certain shifts I dedicate, the other two shifts I rotate with men. Everybody wants to do their own
Yes.
planning, in
So are
terms.
you witnessing any such growth percentages, if you want to see that? Are they using any growth in the number of either women apprentices or programs for women-centric programs, or skilling of, or the admission of women in these skilling initiatives?
Yeah, so we haven't yet seen very significant change in the number of women apprentices per se, let's say. But I am seeing a lot more intent coming in.
Mm.
I think there isn't enough supply, so I think
Sure.
the number is not growing and reflecting right away. But I think with the intent coming in, with a lot of there are many CSR programs that we are trying to do now for women being included in the workforce in the non-traditional job roles. And these are areas where we see there are significant. See, at a OEM level, I think our diversity levels are quite good in most places. Some of them are doing extremely well. At the component level, people who have cleaner, factories, somewhat electronic sub-assemblies and stuff like that, we see a lot more women. But there are more who are doing mechanical sub-assemblies who are pushing for more women to come in. The shop floors are becoming better, more automation is happening. No major heavy lifting is required in that sense, kind of issues that people used to flag earlier. So some of those are doing, but of course, to trickle it down to the tier 2, tier 3 level suppliers at the dealerships, these are areas which still need to go a long way. But at a OEM at a tier 1 level, I think we are already seeing a significant amount of inclusion that is happening.
Great, fantastic. Thank you so much, Arindam. I think it was a very engaging conversation. A lot of insights you shared with us. Obviously, you see the trends, where the demand is going up. PLI is one of the factors that is kind of, generating that kind of a demand. And also the various trends, the various mechanisms which the industry is now kind of working on to bridge the skill gap, which is quite wide. And obviously, the idea is that now the demand is going to be at a much faster pace. So hence, the capacity planning has to be there, which they are now kind of resort to. And how you are collaborating with both academia and the industry to ensure that the capacity and the capability both are being built. Thank you so much once again, Arindam.
Thank you. Always a pleasure speaking to you, Sumit. Thank you. Thank you so much.
Great.